Greetings to you, esteemed people of the internet. Now, if you're watching this, there is a good chance you're, like me, a petrol head. If so, for your info, I'm sat in a 992.1 Carrera S, which is quite possibly the nicest car I'll ever own. But here's the thing, it's 2025, and cars like this these days are a hard thing to justify. Having a chunk of metal melting money onto your drive, or just as bad, being tethered to an enormous financial product, well, it's a big indulgence. Now, I'm just a normal guy with a young family. I run my own business and I'm a sportsman at heart, and to be honest, I'd much rather be playing than working, so these two goals don't really fit together. So what to do? Well, this video is how I crack that nut. Fraught with risk, certainly lots of uncertainty, and most definitely lots of cursing and bleeding fingers. It's a stream of constant problem solving, which for the most part has been extremely enjoyable. But moreover, it's allowed me to follow a path into this level of engineering that otherwise I would not be able to experience nor justify. And it's been said that it's not the acquisition of stuff that's important in life. Moreover, it's the journey that you take along the way. And this, I guess, is as good as any an example of that. So follow me as I pull the napkins out of the nose of this thing and get her back onto the road. I'm no automotive guru, put my hands up straight away. I'm just a tenacious problem solver with an absolute love of driving. So for now, let's pop the cork and I'll give you the story of how this whole crazy project started out. Well, it is dark. That is a digger, and that is a piece of rope tied to the car. Just dragged it off the transporter. That was sketchy. Sketchy. The headlight works. Can't get it in neutral, so we had to drag it off the truck. Oh, that is cool. Now, I've been lucky enough to go through quite a few different cars, but the reviews I read and recommendations from friends always had so much to say about Porsche's sports cars. Honestly, I kind of thought Porsche was a bit overpriced and a bit underpowered, but as the years went by, my interest peaked and I eventually ended up buying the Cayman S at auction, and I fell in love with it so completely that it changed my view of driving. Now that sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but honestly it's true, and I drove that 981 Cayman for 2 years. But I started listening to reviews saying that the Cayman is fantastic, but it can't do what a 911 can do. And no one really ever justified those comments. But one thing for sure, it made the 992 itch worse. So I formulated a plan. Now, I was after the latest of the models, the 992, but you know, I could either buy the cheapest one I could find on Auto Trader and fix it, or I could buy one that had had a bad day and been crashed. But if it was going to happen, I wanted the right spec, which is a tough ask. Now, it's a big commitment putting a load of cash into something like this, so I wanted to get it right. And I knew that the chances of finding the right specification for me was going to be pretty slim. Now, if you speak to anybody who does research on these things, they'll say, yeah, pinnacle is the GT3, the aspirated engine, and that's one of the reasons that I fell in love with the 981. It was a 3.4 flat six, naturally aspirated, revved to, I think, 8,200. And having owned an aspirated RS4 in years previous, I really love that engine. But, you know, my budget was not gonna stretch to a GT product. It was simply out of the question. Even if I got one at crazy good value, I'd rather have the money off my mortgage than I would have it on the drive. So I wanted rear wheel drive, and it had to be a Carrera S. And I wanted the 992, the latest technology version, because to be honest, I'm an engineer at heart, even though I'm not in the engineering industry, but I love the technology and I just really wanted to experience the most recent iteration of it. So that was the plan, the highest spec 992 I could find. And I had a tinkle at a few, but none of them were really my spec. And I thought, you know what, if it goes cheap, I'll dive in, we'll have a go. Nothing ever really came off. And then one day I happened upon the auction for this. Now, if I'd have gone into a Porsche dealership with an open checkbook and ticked every single box I'd wanted to tick, this is the spec I would have chosen. It was mental, absolutely mental. Four-wheel steering, no sunroof, save the weight, carbon ceramic brakes, sport suspension, the correct steering wheel, the right level of trim, a nose lift, sports exhaust, chrono pack, the right wheel options, not only the right sizes, but the exact wheel design and color that I would have wanted, the right color of the car. I really wanted one in white. It's white. Crazy, absolutely crazy. And moreover, once I got all excited and shifted my money around to have a go at this, I did the sums, worked out all the figures. The day of the auction came around and I'm just thinking, you know what, I know where I'm going to go on this, but I'm not going to go any further. When it actually came to the auction and I'd seen what a lot of the other cars had gone for, the money that I got this for, honestly, the stars all aligned. I couldn't believe it. So we were in. But a lot of questions still remained. Now, buying a car on salvage, I've done it a few times, and I've watched plenty of other YouTubers do this. Sometimes it comes off, sometimes it doesn't. This was all up in the air. I knew that there may be a potentially massive amount of work ahead. But one of the reasons why I was prepared to take such a risk on a car like this is simply down to the fact that these cars, these 992s and a lot of the other Porsches, are all modular. They're put together in sections, and those sections are removable and replaceable. So not like a traditional car where you have a chassis, and if that chassis gets bent, you're forced to bend everything back into place again. There's a lot of Cat S cars come out of the auction rooms with chassis damage that people will bend back to true and then stick back on the road again. That's something I would never want to do with a car of this capacity. And I knew this having a Cat S classification meant that somewhere in this, the chassis was damaged. Don't know where. I couldn't view the car before the auction. It was unfeasible. And to be honest, everybody else who bids on these cars, nobody views them either, only some of the really high-end stuff. But my calcs were in budget for a worst-case scenario. And I commissioned the guy that I know to go and pick this thing up from Copart. And I sat and I waited, and cold spring, early spring morning, in fact I think it was March, he arrived with this thing on the back of a low loader. But that was probably the most stressful point of the whole escapade. So let's take up the story the next morning when we see the car for the first time in the cold light of day, and I'll tell you why. I'm here, stood outside it now. We'll have a walk around. Here she is. This is her in all of her glory. This is the good side, just in case you're wondering. We'll take a walk around here now. But these things, this PDK gearbox, this thing, so it's had a front end hit on the front quarter. We think it's actually been crashed into as opposed to actually crashed. But suffice it to say, PDK gearboxes are automatic. So because the airbags have deployed, it's deployed the pyro fuse as well. And it's not a question of just going in the fuse box and swapping it out. These things are buried. And without the pyro fuse, you can't start the car. And if you can't start the car, you can't get it in neutral. So whilst it was put on a low loader, a Copart, onto my friend's low loader, he brought it up here in the middle of the night and we couldn't get it off the trailer. So we had to put some skids under the back wheels, front wheel drive, and get the digger you see behind me to actually drag it forwards off the low loader, trying to keep it straight. It sounds dramatic. We ticked all the boxes, we knew exactly what we were doing, we did it carefully, but it was still sketchy. So if you want to move a car and the back wheels are locked, but you need to drag it, what do you do? And you haven't got a rolling trolley, but you have two wooden MDF plates and a digger. That's right, baby. Might need some new wooden plates though. But the first job is clearly the pyro fuse. We need to be able to get the pyro fuse replaced so we can start the car and we can actually shift it around, and that's the first job. And when these things come from auction, I've had this with a couple of cars. The chap who owned this, saying chap, could have been a lady as well, they clearly just walked away from the scene at the time. In fact, I know it's a chap that bought this because his shoes are still inside. He's a size 8. Could be a lady, but I'm pretty sure it's a size 8 man's shoe. And yeah, he's just left the roadside and that's the last he saw of the car. The rest of it just went into the insurance system. And here you can see we've had the cover off as well to get to the battery so we could deal with it. There's a car cover in there. There's a pair of shoes. There's various other bits and bobs. And a nice pair of Ray-Bans as well, which is quite amusing. Now this car is Cat S, which means it's had some kind of structural damage, but they don't really tell you what it is on auction, so it's always a risk. Now a cursory look around it, I don't think that tub's taken a hit, but clearly something close to it has. So it's going to be a question of stripping it down and having a look at actually what is going on. Clearly it needs a new bumper, new rad pack. Headlight, although it does work, is smashed, and I was in the Porsche dealership this morning and they tell me that it's a whole headlight on nothing, which is a bit of a shame. At least I'll have spares. And the other thing that was a big concern on this was the fact that it's got carbon ceramic brakes, which, amazing as they are and absolutely top of my want list. I've always wanted ceramic brakes ever since I drove an RS4 with ceramics on. Are they damaged? And this is the one that we thought may be damaged, but if you can see here, there's such little damage in this area that absolutely looks fine, not a mark on it. And when we look down here to the actual bits where the suspension arms connect onto the tub, to my eye there doesn't seem to be any damage at all. So I don't wish to curse it, but I think we've done really well here. I don't think this is really even close to Cat S, if I'm honest. It looks more like Cat N. But we'll see. We'll have a look. I mean, there's some damage here on the bumper, and there may be some, you know, that's connected onto the chassis as well. The other thing, apart from the pyro fuse going, clearly all the airbags have gone. So in here we've got driver's airbag, we've got passenger airbag, which took the windscreen out, and then we've also got the curtain airbags here. 1, 2. Now that's 4 airbags going off inside this cabin. It's not a big place, and what I think has actually happened is that the pressure wave that went off when these bad boys went actually put out this back window. Now, I'm not entirely sure if it's designed to do it, but when the car came, this back window was loose and it just clips in place. So I'm pretty sure that that is designed to actually pop to relieve the pressure in the cabin when the airbags go off, which is pretty radical. But yeah, another job for the list. It's funny when you come to these cars just trying to be detective and figure out exactly what happened. Were they crashed into? Did they lose it? Trying to reconstruct the accident. And sometimes, that happened with the GT86, the guy actually got in touch with me afterwards to say it was his car, and he even had dashcam footage of it happening. He got rear-ended by somebody who was just not even looking where they were going. So he was absolutely spewing as well because he loved that car. For this one, I have absolutely no idea what's going on. I personally think that somebody came at him from the front and there was nothing that he could do. And yeah, that's a real sad story, because this thing has clearly been built to a spec that the driver was obviously a massive you know, car enthusiastic like myself. But I can say that the driver's seat is extended, and now all these seat belts have pyro chargers in them to tighten them in the event of an impact, and I hadn't realized just how tight they go. The passenger seat one here, that is literally, if that was on a guitar you could play a tune. It is so tight. Similarly, the driver's one is extended, so the guy has obviously been in a crash on his own, which is good or bad, I don't know. And I'll attempt to put the seatbelt on now and see how fat he was. Is he fat? Is he fat? Is he fatter than me? Is he not fatter than me? Oh, he's quite a bit fatter than me. Yeah, definitely a big guy. But yeah, there's always something to ponder and wonder about. And you can see here the dashboards pops. I've seen this on a lot of 992s. When the airbags go off, it lifts the corner pockets around. But what a beautiful vehicle. Absolutely dead, the battery. That'll have to be replaced. Although we did manage to get some functionality out of everything when we got it on the loader. Sadly not into manual. But yeah, as always happens with these things, the batteries will need to be replaced. The other thing that's odd about this crash is that the rear driver's side tyre is flat. Now when you come to have a look at it, you'll see that it's absolutely shredded. I mean, that is right through into the middle of the tyre, so that's taken some serious damage. There's a little bit of scuffing here on the rim as well, but there's no damage on this side of the car at all, none. So how'd that happen? The only thing I can think is that somebody at Copart or the recovery people who recovered the vehicle from the scene has actually stuck a forklift prong through the middle of the tyre, which is pretty sloppy. There's no other way I can explain this, because this side of the car has no damage whatsoever. Yeah, shame, but it is what it is. It's a nice new tyre as well. Hope there's no damage to the wheel. I'm glad they didn't stick it through the carbon ceramic. So let's get the time lapse on, start stripping off these mashed bits and see what we can find. Got the headlight out, there's not much left of that. It is a very poorly looking thing. Still works though. Everything about it still works, and I'm not even entirely sure if there was an error code on the dashboard for it, but it is absolutely smashed to oblivion. It's a shame you can't get cases for these things. because you know, if I could refit the internals into a case, it could save quite a bit on the materials for rebuild, but there's quite a bit of marking on the outside of the lens, so probably best replaced. But the ballast, at least I know, is okay, and yeah, onwards and upwards. That's the hole it came from. All right, it's something interesting as you strip back these things. It's quite fascinating to see how many parts are shared between manufacturers. And just stripping out the frunk here, let me show you. As we sort of chop into getting out the carpets and stuff, you can see down here there's an ECU, I'm not entirely sure which one it is, but Audi mark quite clearly. What I'm essentially doing today is putting a lot of the broken parts from the vehicle, because I suspect that their part numbers are going to be shared items throughout the industry, and we can go hunting and see if we can't find replacement parts through different manufacturers that are a lot cheaper. Porsche will, especially on this 992, with it being such a new car, there's not a lot of availability for specific Porsche part numbers out there, I've found. So we're going to see what we can do with pulling that spreadsheet list down a bit and replacing it for like parts, and pulling every single component off and doing a sort of manual search on each one. It's hopefully going to yield some results, but we'll see. Well, that's the front wheel off, and it's the first time I've had a good look at these brakes. And if you're a car lover, I'm pretty sure you will love these. That is beautiful. How shiny it is as well. Definitely caution in handling these things. That is massive, massive. And the front wheels are 20-inch, and there's not much spare room inside. Wow, can't wait to drive this thing. All right, here's an interesting one. Pulling off the rear covering of the wheel arch, and I found this little round thing cover, and I assumed that it would be a blanking plate, but then the nuts behind it don't have blanking plate, so I left it alone, didn't pry it, and see if it would come loose. And as I pull the plate back, it's actually a sensor. And I've been trying to rack my brains as to what that sensor's gonna do. But in all honesty, I think it's a rain sensor. I think it's a part of the traction control system to actually tell the car when it's raining, which, if I'm right, is pretty mental and also very cool. But I'll have a dig on that and see what I can find out about it later. Looks a bit cleaner. Full marks for keeping your washer bottle full. And there's that rad pack. Looking a little sorry. Condenser, radiator, fan. And that fan costs a fortune. So I'm hoping Mr. Fan is feeling happier than he looks. Oh look, That looks particularly suspect. I'm sure it's just a flesh wound. All kinds of good. Right, I'm struggling to get one of the bolts undone there, and for all of my surfing friends, the tool that I needed was foil drive torque wrench. So thanks, foil drive. Right, so we've got all of that stripped back. I don't want to take the rad packs off just yet. I don't want to disconnect all the cooling. What cooling's left, it's definitely been leaking, that radiator. But currently I can't start the car because of the pyro fuse. So the next job is going to be the dreaded pyro fuse. Now, I have been online, I have checked many different ways to do this. Most of these 992s, the guys who were working on them when they first came out were digging, like mining, bit by bit of the dashboard out and out and out and out and out until they found out where it was. Subsequently, they've done it since. There's a guy in the US that's done it, and of course Matt Armstrong had one of these famously over in Florida with Tavares, and those guys were the digging initially, but then they figured out that the way they make them in the factory is to take the entire dashboard out in one unit, and that's what I'm going to have a go at, because I don't really need to be in there for anything but the pyro fuse. So this is going to be a fairly big job. It's probably stretched over a couple of days, unless the drama that I see on YouTube is exactly that and the thing comes out in half an hour. But we will see. We'll start digging and see where we get. So that's it for this first video. I'm going to leave you in anticipation of the suffering I'm about to undergo getting that dash out. So wish me luck, and I'll see you in a week or so's time for the next video. But in the meantime, do me a favor, get subscribed. And if you like the idea of what I'm doing, maybe share it with your mates, and it'll give you all a bit of Dutch courage in perhaps doing something similar. So I'll see you next time for some more pain, bleeding fingers, the continuing emptying of my wallet, as hopefully we get ever closer to starting her up. Yep, okay. Look at all those lights. Look at them all. It's like a Christmas tree. Right. Dare I push the starter button? I don't even know what the starter button is. I think you turn this key to the right. What do you reckon?